All right, ladies and gents, here we go with another one. This is Contact Report 39. Okay. And let's see. Translator Benjamin Stevens translated this one. Corrections and improvements made by Catherine Mossman and Joseph Darmanin. Contact persons are Pata and Semjase. Semjase and her dad. Okay, Contact Report 39, Wednesday, 3rd of December, 1975, at 1:37 in the morning, 01:37. Okay, Billy, you called me to this contact quite unexpectedly. I was just falling asleep, while my wife only slept for a few minutes. Thus, I have secretly sneaked away once again. Semjase, that is known to me, but do not worry, because she will sleep so soundly that she will not notice your absence. Billy, aha, you have given her a special anesthetic? Semjase, it does not concern an anesthetic, but rather a naturally induced deep sleep. They knocked her out. Billy, the why of that would probably be asking too much, right? Semjase, it would take too long, for we have many other and more important things to do. Billy, of course, but what should happen now if I am not back at the time, because then there will be a nice argument with my dear wife. If she wakes up and I am no longer lying in bed and also cannot be found, then something will happen. Semjase, you worry for nothing. She will not wake up before you are back. But in addition, as we have discussed, we will skip over time. Billy, that you said, but in the end, I will become an old man through this. Semjase, it should not become the rule. Billy, good. Well, I am also not afraid of aging, but how long should the journey last then? Semjase, we have calculated 2 days for it. Billy, then, once again, you will probably feed me with the stuff that does not let me sleep, right? This let us one's life start well and last a little longer. It creates, so to speak, a balance for the 2 days, whereby I become older in this ordeal, in this deal. Semjase, it is not like that because we have procured earthly food for you. Otherwise, you would stay awake for too long. Billy, so that means I must occupy 2 days with a sleep deficit. Semjase, sure, but you are, indeed, used to such. Billy, you say that very easily. In the end, I am not getting any younger. Then I will certainly wander around sleepy again like a tramp. Well, what should happen now? Semjase, first, I would like to make you familiar with this new device. Billy, this is another scanning device for taking photographs, yes? Semjase, certainly. I have allowed it to be made according to Askett's information. It will be a better help to you than the first device. Billy, let's hope so. But, by the way, Askett, she still owes me the transmissions. You know, the ones that I have misplaced or lost. When can she give me these? Semjase, that will happen at the beginning of next year. Billy, aha, then there will again be much work. The last time it was indeed a bit dull. Also, Arahat Atharsada has not signaled itself. Semjase, you do indeed know that I am currently very busy elsewhere. But on the other hand, your strength was so used up by us, Arahat Atharsada and Patali, that we must award you a recovery. Billy, now, however, you make me laugh. I can already endure a lot. Semjase, I do not doubt that, but you should not have to exhaust your last reserves. It is enough that for many long years you have given more and demanded more of yourself than all that was good for you. You often over-exploited your strength and more than just exhausted yourself. Another Earth human would have broken from it and would have lost his or her life. Billy, one must, after all, still do something for his task. Besides, playing the soft man does not help anything. Thus, I do not understand your sentimental outburst. Semjase, you are now more important than ever, for you still have a lot of work to do. This should be divided, however, according to your strength, so that you do not fall prey to exhaustion. This has nothing to do with sentimentality. Billy, you really make me grin. I am really no weakling. Semjase, sure, and also no one can say that of you. You are very often just too hard on yourself. And exactly because of this, you must leave it to us as to how much work we can burden you with. Thus, I also know that you only ever thoughtfully express yourself about the work imposed on you as a result of your concerns that you could not fulfill your task, for you always wanted to do everything extremely well. However, we have never burdened you any more than what seemed possible to us, even if we had to use up a lot of your strength by this. But now you really need some rest so that you can recover. We are truly able to judge this better. Billy, then I must, indeed, dance to the music that is played for me. Semjase, sure, you will not be able to do anything else. But now, first of all, try out the new device. Meanwhile, I will bring my ship into space. Semjase moves her ship high above the earth, and I occupy myself with a new scanning device for photographing. Billy, I have understood the thing. Semjase, that should not be hard for you. Billy, but how does it stand now with the dimension gate in the Devil's Triangle? Can one see this? Semjase, with eyes alone, it is not recognizable, but it is possible to make the radiation visible. Billy, you mean that ... Semjase, sure, I can make the radiation visible by my ship. Only 2 paths of radiation are currently recognizable from this side of the Earth. However, while the third is behind the Earth and therefore cannot be seen from here. Billy, then fiddle around with your devices at once. Can I also photograph this then? Semjase, sure, but you will see a lot more things than what you are now normally able to recognize. Billy, will I see that then on a screen? Semjase, no. You may recognize it through the viewing window because the visibility of the radiation occurs through a radiation shield that is spread out by the entire ship. Pay close attention now to the Earth. ... Billy, girl, that is fantastic. I actually see 2 enormous paths of radiation. But in addition, there are still many balls and other things all around the Earth. What are these? Semjase, those are concentrations of energy of the most diverse types and strengths. They orbit the Earth at irregular distances and intervals, and are very important for the existence capability of the earthly life forms. I may not explain more about that. Billy, very well, then I will take a quick photo. So I have it. What now? Semjase, we still have to wait some time. Billy, what for? Semjase, for Father, because you do indeed know that without his ship, we would not be able to return to this time anymore. Billy, of course, you already said that earlier, but how long will it take then? Semjase, I do not know exactly, but it will take some time. Billy, then I can indeed unpack my artillery. Semjase, you have brought your weapons? Billy, of course. What do you think? If a dinosaur wants to say hi or to say good morning or good afternoon to me, then I must be able to greet him, but decently, if his greeting should be a bit rude. Semjase, sure, but you have a somewhat strange sense of humor. It is good that you have armed yourself because you certainly know how to handle your weapons better than ours. It is good that you have brought them along. But I just do not understand why you have no fear at all, for such animals can get very angry. Billy, we shall see. I will, in any case, try to fondle a dear little animal's chin. Semjase, I cannot allow that. Billy, you will see, for I am quite cheeky. I certainly will not ask you beforehand, for even though I am your guest, that does not mean I am just going to ... Semjase, you might be right. You Earth humans still have certain characteristics that are no longer peculiar to our race. Billy, what characteristics do you mean by that, or with that? Semjase, you call it sense of adventure. Billy, I have always been an adventurous fellow. Semjase, you really have a special nature. Billy, that is possible, but now I have a question for you. What actually happened with the 2 drawings that you promised me regarding the Zeta Reticuli intelligences? Semjase, unfortunately, I could not make these for you. The permission for it was not granted to me. I acted somewhat hastily with my promise. So I guess the High Council shot her down. Or somebody, maybe Ptah. Billy, that's not so bad. Something like that can happen sometimes. But may I perhaps ask why? Semjase, in order to be able to make the pictures correctly, I would have had to draw certain details from which insights for the earthly scientists would have arisen, which they are not permitted to obtain. They are not yet permitted to obtain. They're trying to keep a bunch of stuff from our scientists because we're not ready for it yet. Billy, I understand, but since we are already talking about drawing, I would be interested to know what the dear God actually looks like or looked like. Semjase, of which one are you thinking? Billy, of the great JHWH, who still wanders like a ghost today through the Christian religion. Semjase, there are 2 of those. Billy, 2? Semjase, sure. Billy, I do not understand that. Semjase, why do you speak an untruth? Billy, huh? Semjase, you know the circumstances very well. Billy, well then, since you know about that, I mean the old dear God, JHWH the Barbarian, as I have christened him, or the Lord Jehovah, as he was commonly called. Semjase, the one of the old time or Moses time? The one of the old time or Moses time. Billy, exactly. I mean the superhero, that ambivalent subject who, on the one hand, proclaimed himself as the creation and boastfully spoke of universal love, mercy, and justice, but who, on the other hand, heedlessly demanded innocent human blood and allowed millions of Earth humans to be brutally slaughtered at his command. Semjase, that is a very accurate statement. His image is known to me very well. You call him the biblical God, but with us he is called the unjust and cruel one. He came to his end approximately 2,150 years ago. He was a very malicious and power-hungry life form who led his regime together with another and good JHWH and drove countless Earth humans to death and destruction. ... Billy, and to whom today's Christianity still pays hellish tribute. Semjase, sure, unfortunately that is so, for his malignant influence was enormous. Billy, that is well known to me, but how would it be now if you would draw this super twit for me? Do you still have my paper and pencils? Semjase, sure, but you speak very despairingly of Jehovah. Billy, should I still pay homage to him, then? After all, he is the most to blame for the fact that we on the earth live in the insanity of his cultic religion and that millions of innocent Earth humans were murdered on his account. Should I heap praise, then, on this twit just for this? Semjase, you should not do that, for he was evil and unjust. Only a distant descendant was just. I only wanted to hear how you stand with him. Billy, all right, but you do indeed know my opinion. Your question was therefore pointless. Emmanuel only spoke of a God in his present time and of earlier gods, but never of JHWH the barbarian. Dot, dot, dot. Semjase, dot, 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 the unjust or cruel one. Billy, all right, then I will just call the guy after your designations. But can you now draw the fellow for me? Is there still enough time for this? Semjase, sure. Billy, good. Then I will take a somewhat closer look at your ship, if you do not have anything against it. If the thing zooms off, then you will just have to interrupt the drawing and bring the mill back on course. Semjase, you have planned a few things, yes? Billy, exactly. I have always wanted to see if I can circle such a thing around myself. I have always watched you closely and now know a bit about the control and the initial startup of the drive. If you have nothing against it, then I will play around with it a little. Semjase, you are really good. You actually mean your words seriously. Billy, do you think then that I was joking? Semjase, I truly assumed so. Billy, well then, now you know it is no joke. Now, quietly, get going with the drawing. I will only circle around the earth a few times. So, you see, the mill is already zooming off. So now, a little more steam and dot, dot, dot. Semjase, Arimo, dot, dot, dot. Arimo, dot, dot, dot. Billy, what do you mean? Semjase, halt, I said. Halt, halt. Dot, dot, dot. Billy, I do not understand that. So the mill stands. What is wrong then? Semjase, sorry, of course, you could not understand me. I got excited and thus spoke in my native language. Billy, aha, so Arimo means stop? Semjase, no, it means halt. That is the difference. Billy, what is the matter then? Do you have something against it if I properly bring the box up to speed once, or if I let it circle around at all? You could have nevertheless said that directly. Semjase, I have nothing to object to that, because I have already known for a long time that you have endeavored to be able to fly the ship once. And I also know very well that you can do it. But did you pay attention to the speed just now? Billy, of course, it was just less than 290,000 kph, kilometers per hour. I did not want to grind the mill any further because of the time and so on. You even said yourself that it is very dangerous if one exceeds the speed of light with the normal drive or simply at all without diving at the same time into hyperspace. Semjase, sure. You actually kept that in mind? Billy, should I lie to you then? Semjase, to me that would be something completely foreign of you. Sorry, I needlessly excited myself. I felt as though you had not considered the facts regarding the speed. But that obviously is not so, as you say. You can steer my ship calmly, if you like. But please pay attention here. If you should lose control, then simply press these 3 contact points in the grid. By these, everything turns to 0 position, and the automatic control mechanism regulates everything within a split second. Thus, no dangers can appear. Oh, she's got an autopilot. But despite everything, please pay attention to the speed. Done, girl. So have no, or Billy, done, girl, so have no fear. Semjase, good then. Now I will devote myself to the drawing. Billy, that is nice. Then I will have another go. Semjase, but please note my instruction. She don't want to end up a fireball in the atmosphere or something. Okay, Billy, of course, nevertheless, do not worry all the time. I certainly do not act carelessly. Semjase, I will probably never understand your kind, But you Earth humans are all a bit strange in this manner. Billy, you mean because of the sense of adventure and such? Semjase, sure, it is something completely foreign to me. So I wonder what they do in their spare time. If they have no sense of adventure, sounds like kind of a boring life. At least from my perspective. Anyway, Billy, we are earthworms. We earthworms are, after all, still a type of ancient swashbuckler, at least some of us. The unknown simply beckons us, and the harder life hits us, the more we can enjoy it. I will teach you this all right, perhaps when we shake a dinosaur's paw. Semjase, may reason keep me from that. Billy, you see, that is exactly what you have to turn off, for it inhibits everything in such matters because it generates anxiety. Billy uses the word anxiety and fear kind of either way. They're the same. So let me read that again. You see, that is exactly what you have to turn off, for it inhibits everything in such matters because it generates anxiety. Reason tells you that a dinosaur is an evil beast, but the intellect says that the little creature only acts crazy when it feels excited. Thus, if we shake its paw quite peacefully, then it will start to be happy, but not to turn around. Semjase, I do not understand your humor. Billy, my words are meant seriously. Semjase, huh? Just question mark, question mark, question mark. Billy, look, your reason tells you or told you that I could rev up your mill over the speed of light, which is why you also got excited. After my explanation, however, you calmed yourself down, for your intellect taught you, through my explanation, that you do not need to be afraid because I really took into account the factor that caused you anxiety. This means, then, that you have to see the facts exactly as they actually are. Of course, you can also be mistaken once, and then the salad is simply baked and everything is in the vinegar. Besides, what are 290,000 kilometers per hour? Because that is just a pittance compared to the speed of light, which is around 300,000 kph, or no, kilometers per second. Speed of light, which is around 300,000 kilometers per second, not kilometers per hour. Semjase, you say that so easily, but I cannot deny you the logic in it. Maybe I do actually let myself be guided too much by reason in certain things, without considering, at the same time, the intellectual concerns in a proper measure. Billy, certainly, but these wise sayings are also were not cultivated in my own field. Svath actually taught them to me, namely when I was still a boy. Semjase, nevertheless, you are more developed in them and in their observance than I am. It may well be because of our high level of development that we have a different nature in such concerns. With certainty, our somewhat finer dimension also exerts a certain influence on it. Sometime I will have to talk with my people about it, because I think that a different forming in these things would be of use for us. Billy, so you therefore suddenly believe. Semjase, you split my words. You know their meaning very well. Billy, of course, I was just surprised that you have already sunk so much into our manner of speaking. On the other hand, I am also surprised that you suddenly speak so openly of your finer dimension, for you yourself have forbidden me from doing this up to now. Semjase, my explanation still gives no further clues. So they're in a finer dimension? Semjase, my explanation still gives no further clues. I wonder what he's talking about, a finer dimension. That you suddenly speak so openly of your finer dimension. Anyway, we'll find out someday. Semjase, my explanation still gives no further clues. Billy, that is right. Therefore, let us leave that. So let us continue. You draw, and I try to convert the mill into scrap metal. Semjase, if you, at the same time, leave the earth out of play, dot, dot, dot. Billy, huh? Semjase, ha, 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 ha. Billy, I understand. You switch very quickly, but I am extremely glad that you strive for the manner of us earthworms. Semjase, it is much easier than I had assumed, dot, dot, dot. Billy, but now let us actually do this, dot, dot, dot. In parentheses, it takes 16 minutes before Semjase is finished with her drawing, and during that time, I wildly circle around with the ship, but unfortunately only around the earth and the moon, which to me are things that are always in the way. End parentheses. Semjase, here you have your JHWH, Jehovah. Billy, that is the special hero. This fellow just does not look friendly. Semjase, that is quite correct. Billy, it was probably the best solution that he was deposed by force. Semjase, sure. Billy, if there is still enough time, I still have a few questions. Semjase, just ask. There is still enough time at our disposal. Billy, good. I have been occupied with some of the things that you transmitted to me with the last contact. Essentially, it concerns the contactees. You named 21 of these for me. For another 3, you said that for certain reasons, you were not allowed to speak of them yet. So, therefore, dot, dot, dot. Semjase, dot, dot, dot. Because, first, several facts still have to be clarified. Billy, nice and good, but it does not make sense to me that only these 21 or 24 should be the only ones who actually had or have contact with extraterrestrials. Semjase, I explained to you, nevertheless, that I only named for you those who are not of very great importance. And there's a picture here of the IHWH Jehovah, drawn by Semjase. It looks like, I don't know, it looks like a pope in the dressings that he has. Big beard, long hair. Anyway, besides these, however, there are still some other Earth humans who had and still have contact with extraterrestrials. However, their significance is even less important, whereby I address their mediocrity of tasks. But with this, you must not take it that no significance at all may be ascribed to them, for that truly is not so. They also form a part of the whole, but only in a much smaller form than the ones mentioned to you by name. In addition, there are even scientists, authors, and filmmakers who must be designated as contactees. Okay. For they are influenced by us and others through telepathic impulses in order to be serviceable toward progress and enlightenment. How about Gene Roddenberry? Was he one of them? Or Ray Bradbury, or some of these other people? I'll read that again. In addition, there are even scientists, authors, and filmmakers who must be designated as contactees, for they are influenced by us and others through telepathic impulses in order to be serviceable towards progress and enlightenment. Okay. Billy, aha. So that means that among the few true officially known contactees, there are still at least some who must be designated as real contact persons. Semjase, sure, there are even very many of these according to your concepts, but they are not of very great importance, such as those named by me in particular, through whom certain things had to be done and be invented, or who served or should have served for the Enlightenment in regards to the existence of extraterrestrial human life, but which unfortunately was not and is not always the case. So I think Star Trek kind of informed us about extraterrestrial life. Starting back in the 60s, yeah, I think that's Gene Roddenberry. He's the man. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. But Billy, that is finally a bit clearer. Thus, your words mean that we may not interpret your remarks about a few contact persons in the sense that only the 21 or 24 named by you are genuine. Semjase, sure. There are even several other but not officially known contact persons, or more exactly said, a few thousand, but their significance is very low. Of somewhat greater significance are only 24 of those, and to be sure, you are not yet named. However, for you have an extremely great task and responsibility through self-determination, and you are also the only one who also has physical and fully conscious contact with us. Okay, I got interrupted, so I'm going to do that paragraph again. Of somewhat greater significance are only 24 of those, and to be sure, you are not yet named. However, for you have an extremely great task and responsibility through self-determination, and you are also the only one who has physical and fully conscious contact with us. Billy, is it really becoming crazy with you as you cannot be a little more specific? Must you always first provide only partial information then? In this manner, we can come to wrong views. Semjase, that was never in my mind. Billy, I know you probably thought that we could become clever from your information and piece everything together ourselves, but that actually was not so. Semjase, I am very sorry. Unfortunately, I often have very great trouble adapting myself into your stage of thinking. But in the future, I will increasingly try to avoid misunderstandings. Thus, I would like to give you the data regarding the contact persons again in order to eliminate all misunderstandings. Earthly contact persons of not very great importance are those 21 whom I named for you in particular. In addition, however, there are 3 other important human beings whose names I am not allowed to announce to you yet. Besides these, you are to be named as the most important factor of all, for you have to fulfill the mission of the delivery of the spiritual teaching, which is why you were already prepared since your earliest childhood for your prophethood. He started getting trained at the age 4 or 5, I think it was, by Svath. In addition, there are still somewhat more than 17,000 Earth humans who, completely unconsciously, stand in impulse telepathic connection with extraterrestrial intelligences. Yeah, 17,000. Also, this was 50 years ago, so just a thought. That may have gone up or down since then. Of these, there are a few thousand who are known in smaller or larger circles and groups for the fact that they maintain, out of suppositions, but they are not certain of these, to stand or to have stood in contact with extraterrestrial life forms. These, however, are not known to the world public, but only in private circles. Besides these, there are still thousands of other human beings to be mentioned, who have become known to the world public for the fact that they have come into visual contact through observations of flying apparatuses of extraterrestrial life forms, and can still partly continue such contacts because they are attentive sky observers. Many thousands of these who have not been named in particular live in the countries of Germany, Austria, Poland, Russia, China, Australia, New Zealand, America, South America, Spain, France, Italy, and Switzerland, etc. In addition, such visual contact persons are to be found in all other countries of the world, and indeed without any exception. Of these thousands of visual contactees who are not well known to the public, however, there are only 173 who have achieved a somewhat greater significance in relation to becoming publicized. This excludes, however, all those who stand in fellowship with the Giza intelligences. We do not count these among the real contactees. Billy, man, girl, this now looks a bit different than what we previously thought in general. So accordingly, in spite of everything, many of those named in books and newspapers, etc., belong to the actual contactees. This gives a somewhat different picture to everything because we did not know that you also designate human beings as contactees who simply had or have sightings with regards to beamships. Semjase, I am very sorry if I gave my information unclearly. Billy, that is all right, Semjase. It is actually also our fault because we sometimes just do not think very far enough. It probably would have been better if I had tried to get all names of UFO contactees in order than to ask you about the genuineness of the names. In particular, you did indeed tell me that Adamski was not a contactee, as well as not Michalek or the South African Elizabeth Clarer. But recently, I have heard of another name, a certain Menger or something like that. What about this one? Menger. He is not a contactee. His statements and remarks correspond to a deliberate product of his imagination. Billy, that is clear and plain. Sometime may I bring you a list of all names that I can get to know? Semjase, sure. I will then name the real contact persons for you. Billy, thanks, Semjase. That will be very valuable for us. But now I would still be grateful to you if you would give me the exact data of the contact persons. I mean numerically by degree of their importance. Is that possible for you? Semjase, sure. But you already received these data from my father at an earlier time. Billy, I know, but I would like to have them in a little more detail, with more precise explanations. Thus, we will finally have very exact clarity. Semjase, as you wish. Since your discussion with my father, the number of contact persons has increased by a few. At that time, there were 17,422 Earth humans, while today the number to be mentioned is 17,718. So, ... Billy, you really have fantastic concepts in the manner of your measure. The increase amounts to nearly 300 human beings, and yet you speak of a few of these. Semjase, nevertheless, it is only an increase of 296. Billy, of course, but really only? Semjase, I do not understand you. Billy, you are really good, as 296 more human beings is still a rather nice amount. Thus one cannot really speak any more of only a few. But now, please mention the data to me in a table fashion, and also tell me how many Earth humans have already seen UFOs if you know this information. Semjase, we no longer maintain inspection over that because it became unimportant and too extensive. Therefore, I cannot give you exact details. The number of observers or visual contactees should already be approaching the 1 billion mark. Billy, whoa, that is nearly a third of humanity. A billion? No, we're up to... Actually, nowadays we're up to 9 billion. Okay, Semjase. Sure, but only a small part of this mass accepts the reality of the sighted objects. But now, pay attention to my exact details. 17,718 Earth humans currently stand in impulse telepathic connection with extraterrestrial life forms of the most diverse kinds, but they are completely unaware of this. And I guess this is not just the Plejaren people, but it's other extraterrestrials as well. 17,718 people, but they're unaware. Okay. 392 Earth humans had involuntary or purely accidental one-time contact with extraterrestrial life forms since the year 9 BC. These contacts are of no importance, for they were not connected with any tasks. Only very few exceptions, 31 of these, are or were of slight importance in the public life. 173 of the 17,718 contact persons have a half-important significance in the fulfillment of certain tasks in reference to the clarification with respect to their sightings. A small number of these 173 Earth humans were and are known to the world public as visual contactees. 24 of the 17,718 contact persons had a greater significance in the fulfillment of certain tasks. Of these 24, however, only very few were known as contact persons, and all of them have already passed from your world. One of the 17,718 contact persons is of sole utmost importance in the fulfillment of a prophethood. 723 Earth humans are contact persons of the Giza intelligences. These, however, are not counted among the real contact persons. 27 of these 723 Giza contact persons have come to the public worldwide. At present, 36 Earth humans fraudulently call themselves UFO contact persons, even though they never had contacts to record. 7 of these 36 fraudulent Earth humans have become known worldwide as very important contact persons, in quotes, by their fraudulent reports. 29 of these 36 fraudulent Earth humans have likewise become known worldwide by their fraudulent reports, but with much less significance than the first 7. This is the most exact information that I can give you at the moment, and that corresponds to the present conditions. And a note, again, this was 50 years ago. Who knows where they're at now? Billy, with that, I am very satisfied, for this information is now really very clear. In a similar context, however, I would now be interested to know how it is with the other world contactees and recipients of messages from the highest levels. You once said earlier that the real ones of these were also only very few. Semjase, sure, that is so. But at the same time, I only spoke of really high levels and the highest intelligences. No earthly contact persons are to be found who maintain contact with higher or lower or parallel otherworldly lesson. The number of these people, however, who could actually enter into connection with human beings of other dimensions is only to be reckoned as 16 of these all over the world, but these do not use their capabilities. Because we don't have an owner's manual. Sorry. Billy, that is an exact number, but how can you tell this? Semjase, it is a requirement for us to know these matters, thus we must investigate them. Billy, how large, then, is the number of those Earth humans who want to enter into connection with lower spirit forms and otherworldly ones, etc., and who try this even though this is impossible? Semjase, it is impossible for us to investigate that, but on the other hand, it is also not of importance to us. Only important to us are those who could enter into connection with other dimensional human forms. Billy, but still, can you mention an approximate number? Semjase, that is not possible for me, but nevertheless, there are many millions. However, these imagined connections are completely worthless and without any meaning. Only those 16 mentioned are of value, along with the 268 connections in the Earth humans' we collective subconsciousness level. Let me read that again. Only those 16 mentioned are of value, along with the 268 connections in the Earth humans' we, capital W-E, collective subconscious level. So there's a collective subconscious here as well. Kind of like the Borg. And I'm sorry. Anyway, these data, however, are rather inconsistent because they rise or fall almost daily. This occurs through deaths and new appearances. Concerning the 16, it was still the case a few months ago that there were only very few of these who could be counted on one hand. But it is not just the deaths that make these numbers waver, because a very great influence is also exerted on them by fluctuating radiations and movements of consciousness. Billy, what am I to understand by the we subconsciousness level? Semjase, it concerns subconsciousness connections to the we, capital W-E, form of the Earth humans, and therewith to same-dimensioned life forms in this world's area who stand in no wise higher in their evolution than the connection-seeking Earth humans themselves. Thus they cannot convey or obtain any translated or higher knowledge. Parentheses, equals collective subconsciousness, end parents. Billy, thus they are not higher life forms that have an enormous high consciousness knowledge or spiritual knowledge. Semjase, you have grasped it very well. These forms are ones that are in no wise advanced from the average Earth human by many years into the future, for in this case the we collective form is indeed based on the we subconsciousness form of the existing Earth humanity. So it's composed of Earth humans that are all still pretty basic. Billy, so accordingly, it is all still valuable in a certain sense. Semjase, sure, but on the other hand, the millions of pointless attempts to connect to otherworldly forms are nonsensical and completely useless, and sometimes even dangerous. For such pursuers still belong to very low levels of consciousness and cognition, and are still of very low intelligence. Billy, if I understand correctly, is this special we subconsciousness level also responsible for the fact that erroneous religious teachings become represented? Semjase, you think correctly, but often, which must also be said, these connections are only imagined or even deliberately deceptive and non-existent. Billy, that would lead too far again. Maybe one should write a whole book about that sometime. But how long will it be until we can get going? Semjase, you must still have some more patience. My father is very far away. He will not be here for about 30 minutes. Billy, then we can still talk some more. I have enough questions in stock. Something is just a bit fishy to me with this journey, namely the time. I am now already about 2 hours away from home, and I should still stay away for another 2 days. At the same time, I simply do not understand how one would not notice my absence. This is something that just does not make any sense to me. These time shifts quite simply go beyond my spiritual horizon, in quotes. These little time cramps really do not make me any wiser. I understand what really happens, but how everything is connected together, this is a sevenfold mystery to me. Semjase, accept my consolation because I do not understand any more than you. Even our best scientists know only very few secrets of these matters. They do indeed know the how, when, and where, etc., but they do not know the basic causes of the process. Therefore, do not think about it too much, for it would be pointless. I can, however, explain to you what happens in order for you to be able to have 2 days with us. It is the simplest possibility for us. You will be with us for 2 days, while on earth only 2 hours will pass. These 2 hours, however, are only the length of time that you needed to come to the contact place, arrive here with me, and then go home again. But these 2 hours are nevertheless already over and are even exceeded by more than about 40 minutes. Semjase, sure. I just wanted to explain that to you. Your way from your house to the contact place, our greeting, and the flight here lasted only 45 minutes. You will also need this time for the return. Besides this, what you do not know is that on the flight here from Earth, I leaped about 2 days into the past. Besides this, what you do not know is that on the flight here from Earth, I leaped about 2 days into the past. You do, indeed, know how easy this is. Hence, Girl, now I understand. Semjase, you do not understand because we have not done a normal leap into the past. It is a time shift that is still unknown to you. You now live twice, namely once here and once down there on Earth. Billy, now I really do not understand. Semjase, understand yet? We do indeed live here at present, but we are at the same time 2 days in the past. For us, it is now indeed Wednesday, but on Earth, it is now only Monday. Billy, I really do not understand. According to your statement, I would now have to be down there on Earth and would be going straight to bed because on Monday I did not go to bed until morning. So we are now having Monday there on the Earth, as you say. Nevertheless, I am here, and thus I am not climbing into bed. This is therefore not clear. Semjase, you understand everything very well. You just do not want to accept it because you find it too fantastic. Billy, well, you claim, then, that I am here in my normal present and at the same time 2 days in the past. I already lived these 2 past days on the earth below, as seen from my present. But since I am now moved 2 days back, I should first start to live these 2 days down there, or rather live through them, while I will, in reality, first live through these 2 days with you yet. This is nevertheless crazy. Now, according to your statement, I would actually have to exist twice, namely down there on Earth, where I am going straight to bed, and once here. Thus I could now visit myself down there, eh? Semjase, sure. If we would now return to the Earth, then you could, theoretically or practically, depending on the case, talk with yourself. Billy, aha, I could, therefore, go to my own front door and knock until the door would be opened for me. And who would open for me, eh? I for myself, in my own person. Man, girl, I would just like to see my dumb face once when I suddenly stand before me and even say hello to myself. At the same time, it just does not make sense to me that in the normal time only 2 hours pass. while the past requires 2 days for it. Semjase, that is regulated by a time manipulation. Billy, I understand one of those accursed theories of relativity, which are no longer theories for you. Just listen to me, girl. Let these explanations be, for I am too dumb to understand it. My head is already smoking. Semjase, as you wish, but maybe you do, nevertheless, want to visit yourself in the past sometime? Billy, I still want to consider that first, although it excites me to see my own dumb face before me and even talk with myself once. But now a question has been burning on my tongue for a long time. It is just that I have forgotten it again and again. I know from Ask It and you that 91% of the extraterrestrials visiting the Earth are purely human-like, human life forms, albeit with some deviations from our appearance. Through Ask It, I have also seen various such intelligences outside of and far away from the Earth, such that were rather gigantic in stature and reached more than 4.5 meters, while the smallest dwarfs and short ones were 40 centimeters tall. But they were all really recognizable human forms. Some looked like Yetis, others like Cyclops, miniature Goliaths, etc. Two forms which I have also never seen on the Earth were completely different, however. So there were two forms that belonged to the remaining 9% and are non-human, but still human Wesson. My question now is whether you can perhaps make me a list of pictures sometime with the corresponding forms of all these beings that visit the Earth or that previously visited it. Semjase, that is right, for they are, despite their more animalistic appearance and non-humanity, human beings. Making drawings, however, will not be necessary, for in the near future you will otherwise come into possession of such a list. To be sure, it will not be complete, but for the rest, I might be allowed to try to transmit to you picture drawings of the remaining life forms. You will indeed have to have a little more patience for this, nevertheless. I cannot say whether I will be permitted to make such drawings. Billy, that is fine. Then I will leave the rest of the paper and pencils here for you. Semjase, that is not necessary because I will transmit the drawing forms to you directly and guide your hand during the making, if I am allowed. Billy, then I should draw these? Semjase, that is quite right. You are, so to speak, only the implementing tool. Billy, aha, so something the same or similar as with Patali? Semjase, sure, it is the same form. Billy, then it will work out all right. I already have experience in that. But from where then should I receive the list that you mentioned? Semjase, you will learn that soon enough. I do not want to talk about it. Everything will be a great and very good surprise for you. Nevertheless, I told you some time ago that you will now have many important contacts with Earth humans. Billy, that you said, but I have not noticed much of that yet. Semjase, I do not lie to you. You will really recognize the truth of my words soon enough. Billy, I was not speaking of lying, but do you really not want to say who will give me a suitable list of the aforementioned life forms? Semjase, it should be a joyful surprise for you. I told you that, nevertheless. Billy, then just let it be, you secretive person. Semjase, you really try in vain. Billy, well, then I have another question. Can you tell me how many extraterrestrials of a good form had contact with Earth humans since ages ago? Semjase, I have already expected this question from you for a long time, which is why I also strove for the necessary data. Your question really was to be foreseen for a long time. Very many extraterrestrial intelligences came to the Earth from the entire expanse of the Milky Way for thousands of years. For several centuries, however, there have only been very few, and only a few of these tried to pursue communication with the Earth humans or even come into closer contact with these. Mainly, the ones who did so were those who were interested in showing new and better or simply future ways to the to the human beings of the Earth. On the whole, these intelligences were very distant descendants of your indirect ancestors, and only in very rare cases were these different forms of life. But they were still, to a large degree, of a human-like human form. I can say the exact answer to your question, but with the fact that of all the extraterrestrial visitors to the Earth, only 0.57% of those entered into contact with Earth humans. Excluded from these are those who traveled from afar from the depths of the universe, who became resident on the Earth in ages past, and who entered into the earthly history of humankind. Billy, that is not exactly a lot, but now I have a question that has already occupied me for a long time, namely regarding a statement of the Christian Bible. There is talk there of an anti-time or something like that. When then should this time come? Semjase, this is the prophesied anti-time, or the time of the Antichrist, which is falsely laid out in the Christian Bible, in which the earth human will free himself herself from the religious delusion and turn back to the truth. This time is connected with the cosmic age of Aquarius, and the anti-time has already begun with the passage of the first half into the second half of the transitional period, namely exactly at 11:20 hours GMT, which is Greenwich Mean Time, on the 3rd of February 1937. Billy, that would be, therefore, the time of catastrophic confusions of the churches and other religions, mass murders, and of the political and religious wars, of the degeneration of human beings, and otherwise all evils of the last centuries, and the coming time of catastrophes, etc., which were prophesied by the old prophets and also by Emmanuel. Semjase, sure. It is just that they still have not found their completion, because the most severe events are yet to come. And to be sure, sectarian murders and mass suicides, as well as religious, murderous riots, neo-Nazi terror, and other terror through right-wing and left-wing radical elements and groups. But in the future, natural disasters will also take the upper hand in a degenerate form, and indeed not in the least by the fault of Earth humanity. Revolutions and wars will also take the upper hand in menacing measures. Billy, then it can still become quite cheerful. Will the atomic blockheads still chuck their firecrackers on their heads? Semjase, that danger should be averted, at least for now, and according to the probability calculations, that should still be able to be excluded, at least up into the third millennium. We're in the third millennium, 2025, 26. I think that is the third millennium, isn't it? Anyway, the values are at 99.8%. Therefore, only an erupting madness of a ruling power or the inattentiveness of human beings could trigger a nuclear war. Billy, so this means that for now there's no reason to fear a nuclear war anymore? Semjase, sure, if you are thinking of an actual world war. Billy, then humanity can indeed be calmed, at least for the next 2 or 3 decades? Semjase, sure, because such a war could really only be attributed to an erupting madness or inattentiveness. The probability calculations show this with the highest values. Billy, on which one can rely? Semjase, with complete certainty. Billy, it is reassuring to know that maybe now those in different houses will sleep a little more peacefully. Another question, however, was recently brought to me with which I cannot do much with. Wait, yes, I have written it here on this slip of paper. What's with Mount Shasta? This is a mountain or a large hill somewhere on which mysterious things are supposed to happen. What is it all about? Semjase, Mount Shasta is an old volcanic mountain with a partially still unexplored area in America, or more precisely in Northern California. The mountain is very rocky and extremely difficult to climb. In the interior of the mountain itself is a small city, which is inhabited by descendants of extraterrestrials, and which here and there also receives a visit from their space brothers from outer space. It is a very majestic race, peaceful and good, but which anxiously strives not to be discovered by Earth humans. The entrance to their very deeply underground city is well camouflaged under the eastern mountain peak, and it is impossible for Earth humans to find it. But if Earth humans are ever found in their proximity, then they are made imperceptibly unable to move or distracted by the beam weapons that most of the city dwellers carry on themselves for security reasons. Their golden spaceships of a spherical form, for they master spaceflight, can sometimes be seen when they do not protect these from view. Human beings of this race are very well proportioned in their appearance. Their hair is mostly natural blonde, long and curly, which is very fit for their graceful Hyperborean Wesson. Sometimes, despite their shyness of Earth humans, they go into their villages to conduct unrecognized bartering with them, after which they depart and flee in a great hurry, however, if Earth humans come too close to them. But Mount Shasta is not the only place where this race lives, for already at very early times they divided themselves into 3 smaller peoples, with the other 2 living unrecognized and deep underground on the Aleutian Islands and in Alaska. The whole population amounts to just about 700 human beings. Translator's note: to see a possibly genuine photograph of such a spaceship, click on the following link. I'm not going to do that right now, but it's there if you guys want to see it. www.futureofmankind.co.uk/Billy Meyer Contact Report 39. Semjase, you infer correctly. Billy, mannequin, that is fabulous. Then they would be descendants or distant descendants of those who carried out the actual colonization 180,000 or 190,000 years ago in the form that can be regarded as the prehistory of today's human race, at least for the white race. Among them, then, must have also been the JHWH who gave Enoch great wisdom. Enoch. Methuselah went to this one in a later incarnation of Enoch, and Noah was later commissioned by this one's guardian angels to build that ark, with which he actually landed then on Ararat. A-R-A-R-A-T. Yeah, I give up. Semjase, sure, except that the event with the building of the ark, which Noah himself did not build, and with his family and with the animals and everything else, became so falsified that no current information agrees with the truth anymore. The events with the ark did truly take place, but at another time, 90,000 years later. Billy, I know that very well, and in these falsified assertions, the boundless stupidity and lack of education of the scribes inevitably comes to full expression. For how else could they have written in their fantasy story that Ararat is the highest mountain in the world? And on the other hand, how, for example, could elephants as well as mammoths, which were still there at that time, rhinoceroses and other four-legged animals, etc., have climbed down from Arahat? I happen to know the mountain very well and know that even a good mountain climber has lots of distress and trouble when wanting to conquer the mountain. So Arahat must be a mountain. Okay. Semjase, not all Earth humans think logically and with a sharp mind. Many also live in some belief of an unreal religion, which forbids them to reflect upon and investigate such matters. On the other hand, you also have to consider that you have traveled very far and you have considered everything very precisely. As I know, you have traveled 43 countries of the earth and have tirelessly been in investigations. So you have also, with our assistance, experienced and found many more things than what the best archaeologists and other scientists of the earth have ever managed to do. Moreover, you have also traveled outer space and the doll universe with us and have seen various foreign worlds and other life forms. Billy, maybe you are right, but I think that is a little too much glory for me. Tell me again how long we still have to wait here. Semjase, we can depart from here in a few minutes. Billy, good. I would then still like to try to use my film camera to film a satellite and the Earth and maybe even the Moon. Semjase, you can do that, but not until we are back again. But then, for this, at least use the scanning device and then fasten this light source to it firmly. The optics of your camera are not very bright. That is why. Billy, as you wish, but then can I also take pictures on the primeval world with this? Semjase, sure. Billy, that is good. If only I had more film. Even with the slide film, I am just not well covered. I still wanted to get some, but I no longer had enough money. Unfortunately, I am now financially, so to speak, where one whistles from the last hole. I am simply bankrupt, and I cannot even pay all the bills in the month of December. Semjase, I know your problem. You must still be a little patient, however, because there are things in motion that will help you. Your situation will still get worse, though, because in the middle of next year, you will have to seek another place of residence. Billy, but why then? Semjase, someone wants to do you harm and fears you, even one from the local authorities. And since the house in which you live with your family belongs to the local authority, it is not surprising that that one will cancel your residential contract. Billy, nevertheless, I do no one any harm. Semjase, certain people fear the truth, and they cannot cope with the fact that they are in the wrong. You have told them the truth, but they have not recognized the truth and have accused you of lying. Now, however, they have had to learn that they themselves have fallen prey to untruth, which they are unable to cope with. They thought that they were very knowledgeable, and they suddenly had to realize that they are in the wrong, which they now want to deny, however. They fear, however, that you could make their stupidity evident, so they seek this path of self-protection. Because if you are sent to another place of residence, then, so they illogically think you could not reveal their stupidity anymore. Billy, in that, I also have no interest, but it had to come so far sometime. This was to be expected. After all, ... Semjase, sure, but it is only good for you and your family. Asked already told you in the year 1956 that toward the end of the year 1975, your home life, etc., would adapt itself into calmer courses when you step into contact with those people from whom you will then purchase the building for sale, from which you then build up the center. This occurrence with another place of residence is only a part of what the future will bring you in connection with the fulfillment of your mission. Billy, nice and good, but I cannot really live on that. Semjase, it will get better. Billy, you can talk very nicely and easily, but for me, it can be quite uncomfortable. After all, I still have a wife and children, but I do not want to complain about that. I really just want to say that at present, it really looks a bit lousy with my finances. But somehow, I must indeed deal with it. Semjase, that is certainly so, but on the other hand, you are somewhat too unworldly with regard to material values. You should strive for that which is entitled to you. You have to fulfill a very large task which should serve the whole humanity on earth, but you should also be recompensed for it by your fellow human beings. You yourself should be concerned about that. Billy, that is impossible. On the one hand, I am a hopeless anti-materialist, and on the other hand, I may not let myself be paid for my work in the manner that I sell my knowledge. Ultimately, one has taught me to fulfill my task and has educated me therein. But this really only happened so that I can fulfill my task, for it just has to be fulfilled. Therefore, how could I let myself be paid for it? Semjase, you degrade yourself. You know very well that you have not received very much that was simply taught. Rather, you often had to acquire the knowledge under mortal danger and even under very harsh conditions. But on the other hand, it is true that just your task is the most valuable, for which you must be appropriately recognized and recompensed. I know that you are a hopeless anti-materialist, but in your world you may not be in this form. Your world is built on materialism, and therefore you have to think in accordance with this, whether you like it or not. Billy, leave this. You know very well that I cannot do that. Semjase, then with regard to these concerns, you must set an administrator over you. Mr. Jacob, they're bringing back Hans. Mr. Jacob in Wetzcon would probably be a very suitable man for that. He should take care of these concerns for you, and he should take care of your financial interests in all things. That is indeed also a part of his main occupation. Semjase, or Billy, you really make me laugh, Semjase. I am nevertheless really no baby. Semjase, but in your interest, I would like him to take care of your concerns because you have to be able to live. Billy, your wish is honorable, Semjase, but I am now an anti-materialist and cannot just suddenly become a materialist. Semjase, I was not talking about that either, but about Mr. Jacob looking after your financial interests. Billy, very well, then he should, if he wants, but now please leave me in peace with that. I really have never had so much drama around me because of money. Anyway, we better talk about something else. You just said something about the hair of the human beings in Mount Shasta, which reminds me of something very special. Here, there, that is a pair of scissors. Cute, huh? Semjase, that is nevertheless a working device. Billy, of course, it can also be called that, but do you know what such a thing is good for? Semjase, it is designed to cut materials. Billy, exactly. With this, one can even cut or trim away hair. Semjase, sure, but what do you want with it? Billy, nothing less than to cut off a decent tuft of your hair, which we want to put in our display case as a memento of you, so to speak. You know, as something personal from you. We do not want to operate a cult with it. Here, I still have a piece of string to bind a decent bundle. You surely would not have anything against it, right? They want to cut a lock of her hair and put it on display. Semjase, you really have ideas sometimes, but if you think that it could be a pleasure for you, Billy, of course, then I may do so, yes? So please, tie this bundle together for me. Just tighten it a little harder. The thread does not tear so quickly. Good. So let us see. Aha, nice. That is a nice souvenir. Everyone will be happy about that. Semjase, is it really enough? Billy, certainly. I do not want to give you a bald head. Semjase, then let us go now. Billy, aha. Then just zoom off and the mill is already running. But where is Ptah then? Semjase, just now he has changed over, but now look, there are the Bermudas. Okay, we're gonna hang loose here. Semjase, just now he has changed over, but now look, there are the Bermudas. We're up to 1 hour and 20, so I'm gonna get back to it the next time I get a chance. So we're gonna do a trip into these other dimensions. All right, thanks for hanging. I'll get back to you with the rest of this contact report. Looks like we're about halfway through. All right, see ya.